it's a little overwhelming upon initial inspection, but this is exactly what we do. This is this is why I was saying that, like, financially doing what we do makes no fucking sense. But tell you what, it's our life. This is what we choose to do. We've got a message and we're gonna fucking do it. Doesn't matter what you throw in our way, whether it's gonna be some fucking lockdowns or whether it's gonna be an Islamic fucking government, we're gonna keep on doing what the fuck we're doing. You're not gonna tell us what to do. And that's been our message since day one. And that is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying taking control and ownership of your own life. That's what we are doing.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 192 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, my guest is the returning, triumphant Shayan of the band Trivax, my good friend, my brother, my fellow horseman of the podcasting apocalypse. And this is the first opportunity that we've had since getting to know each other of sitting down face to face and having a conversation. So as you can imagine, this one may be our most incendiary to date. We spoke about fitness, mental health, Eloah Burns Out, the upcoming Trivax record. We spoke about the state of the world and much, much more. It's coming your way very shortly. But before we get to that, Matt Priso is another name that members of the Legion should be intimately familiar with. He has gifted us in the past 12 months with new releases by Spells of Torment and Sik. Apparently, he doesn't like to sleep because he is just about to drop his third project on us. It is excellent. And for your listening pleasure, I now present to you the first taste of Conspiracy X.
I'm out there on the highway in Big Dragon.
The song is Manson, Raped by Devils. The band is Conspiracy X, and it features none other than the mighty Matt Priso of Spells of Torment and Sik. As always, I will post the link to the Conspiracy X Bandcamp in the description to the podcast, so make sure that you check it out. And if you buy yourself any music, then let Matt know who sent you. Friends, if you're new to the show and you like what you hear, then you can do me a favor and make sure that you pick up the closest folding chair and smack the subscribe button on your platform of choice until it begs for mercy. You can also support the show by leaving me a 5-star review, sharing this with a friend, foisting it on an enemy, and if you want to rep your Into the Necrosphere colors, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store for podcast-related merchandise, the proceeds of which I plow straight back into the show. So no Patreon, nothing like that. If you do want to support the show, you at least get a little something for it. I am also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook if you want to follow me on there. And then critically, I am a member of an elite unit known as the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. We bring you high-quality, thought-provoking, and entertaining content from Monday to Sunday, and it starts with Horwolf 666, hosted by Brandon Legion every Monday. Every Tuesday, I cast hexes and slay poses on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, you've got Sensei Mike Hill with his long-running, always excellent Everything Went Black. He returns on a Thursday with Necromaniacs alongside co-hosts Professor Jeff Kashid and Deputy Mike Scandado. They review old and new horror movies. Always a great show, always super entertaining. It is followed up every Sunday by Carl Hikaro, who brings you a deep dive into the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knocks, and then Skulking in the Shadows, always ready to pounce and drop a fantastic episode when you least expect it, is this week's guest, Shayan, and he's always brilliant podcast, Iblis Manifestations. If you like Into the Necrosphere, I would say that's probably the one that is most closely aligned to my style. So make sure that you check it out. When Shayan and I have concluded our conversation, don't go anywhere, because this week I will be doing a release roundup of some of my favorite new albums of the last couple of weeks, including records by Unblessed Divine, Incantation, Blut, and Drugoth. And then it's on to my weekly news rant, where singles by Carnifex, Hippie Death Cult, October Tide, and Talker will be rounded up for judgment. Plus, We Are the Pit have put out another list of some of their favorite underrated gems of the 2000s. We will place that under scrutiny and follow that up with a list of my very own. So sit back and enjoy as I welcome back to the show my good friend Shayan of Trivax.
When you do so many of these, I've found this happen with myself quite a few times when I'm doing Iblis, where it's like you've done this so many times where it's difficult to sort of get that connection with the guest, or sometimes you're overthinking so much because you've done it so many times and you have expectations. You know, that's the problem when you have expectations from doing it so many times, that when it comes to the actual conversation, you keep thinking of like, oh, okay, so we can go here, we can go there, we can capitalize on this subject, where can we go? And it's just sometimes like, just fucking let it go, just talk, you know, and sometimes during episodes, I'll be thinking to myself, wow, this is really shit, this is terrible. But then by the time it comes out, or even if I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was fine, what the fuck was I, you know, it's just what's in your own head sometimes from either being a perfectionist or having too much of or just thinking too much about the fact that, oh yeah, well, I'm going to have to release this, and then we're going to have to do this and that, and then the quality is going to be good. You can't think about any of that, you know. Just try and be present as much as possible, I think, is what brings out the best in podcasts, really. Are we going, by the way?
Yeah, we are.
All right, cool.
It's live streaming now, actually, so all the horrible stuff you've been saying about people is going out. So
good. I wanted you all to hear it.
No, well, I mean, it's like I said to you, you know, my approach has always just been find what they want to talk about and let's just let them talk about it. There's no point in trying to force something. There's no point in trying to set an agenda. There's no questions. What I do think, though, and this is maybe a nice way to intro our conversation. So when you've had conversations with somebody that in the moments that you were recording it, you knew like this is something special. Like, you know, people are going to listen to this and they're really going to take something away from it, because if I am, then you know they're going to. You get a little spoilt by that a bit, I think. You know, you have a couple of Cheyenne conversations, or like the conversation I had with like a Katie conversation, or the conversation I had with Blasphemer, and you're like, you know, fucking hell, it's going to be hard to top that. And then you do a couple that don't quite make that grade, and you I'm hypercritical of myself, like unbelievably critical.
I feel that.
So like that's the thing. I think sometimes you get spoiled a little bit by the best ones that you have, and then it's hard to kind of extract yourself away from that and just treat every single thing like its own singular entity, if you understand what I mean.
Oh, for sure. I think the most important thing about it to always consider is that it's an art form, doing podcasts, or just even having a conversation with someone, whether it is recorded or not. It's an art form, you know. And then you have to take into consideration everything to do with the background of both people, what mood they're in at that moment, settings, surroundings, and sometimes even things like language barrier, different vocabularies, different tastes. All of these things will come into play, and you got self-perception, you've got the perception of the other person, all these different things. So it's sort of like this, it's an art form, that you can't always really predict how it's going to go. The best you can do is go in prepared, say, with the subjects that you want to talk to, but that's really the best you can do about it. And it's sort of like I said to you before, it's a little bit like pro wrestling, where it's sort of like people get together and then you can plan some stuff ahead, but it'll just be the chemistry that'll happen along the way, or like another example would be like when you're making a dish, you can use similar ingredients and whatnot, but it's always going to come out differently.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same when you're having a conversation or more so creating a podcast. It's you can't fucking predict it. So best you can do is just be present and be in the moment and try to enjoy it, and try to let your curiosity take the lead, which is usually what I find is the most useful thing for me personally.
100%.
And then just see where it goes, and try not to dictate the outcome too much.
Now, just as we were what we were talking about podcast content, I have to tell you, mate, that Sully conversation, that was one of the most, firstly thought-provoking, but one of the most harrowing things that I had ever heard in my entire life. And the thing that was so jarring about it was how, I think it's inspiring as well. Jarring is maybe not the right word. Inspiring is right. He's so at peace with it. And the way that he was talking about it was so matter of fact. It's like you could hear it's something that he's processed. But I cannot imagine how difficult that must be.
No, I can't, to be honest. Like, I've obviously had similar experiences of my own. And this is something that, obviously, I even said it, like, of course I've known about this story for years. I know what happened to him. But still hearing the whole process again, it's just heartbreaking. It's so painful, like you can't imagine. Just the idea that, okay, you're I think he was 18, 19 years old at the time, and you're taken into this prison basement somewhere in Syria where you're kept in a small room in your boxes with like 12 other people, and there's just one hole in the floor. That's where they used to shit and piss. All so just because he was an alternative guy.
And just for context, for folks who haven't listened to it yet, this is Iblis Manifestations number 56 that we're referring to.
That's right. Yeah.
And Sully is the basis for Trivax. We're talking specifically about what he went through in Syria, basically just for being a dude in a Metallica cover band.
Basically, yeah. And it was
beaten for several days on end to within an inch of his life by a morality squad, you say, that kind of incarcerated him without any reason, without anything, and ultimately his parents had to pay a very significant sum of money to basically bribe the police to let him go.
And what's the scary thing about that is that had it not been for a connection that someone had made to contact his parents, they would have never known where the fuck he was, because they weren't sure if he's even alive by that point. It was basically that. It wasn't even the morality police as such, it was just because of the fact that simply due to the nature of them being alternative, they made the assumption that, these guys are trying to revolt against the government and overthrow Bashar Assad or something. So they just arrested these kids.
Devil-worshipping conspiracy and...
that's right, But the Iranian government does very, very similar things, we had friends of ours. I always feel weird that I got so lucky that I got away so many times. I had a lot of close calls, don't get me wrong. There were times that I was chased by them, especially near... there's this place called Passage Golestan in Tehran. That's like this massive sort of shopping center, and it's actually a nice place to hang out at, if it's not for the cunts that will culturally sort of
enrich you.
Yes. So if it's not for that, it's actually a really nice place. I always used to enjoy hanging out there. There's lots of like great food and things like that. But I actually remember vividly like running away from a bunch of morality police cops that were chasing after me and a few of my friends at the time. So, it's one of them. I always feel really lucky that I never got caught, or even the Trivax live shows that I played in Iran. I'm fucking probably one of the few people in the world who's ever done that. And then also came over here and then played Germany and Netherlands and played all the gigs here in UK. And like, that's fucking wild. I sometimes have to pinch myself like, wow, this is my experience,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't take that for granted, and I make it my mission absolutely to make sure that I still keep on spreading this message and that people are aware of the shit that we have to deal with over there just because of our way of expression, which really is not, I embrace the radicalism that exists within extreme metal wholeheartedly. But at the same time, that degree of opposition, I feel, is, it could be better. You know what I mean? It could be a lot better. And
you mean the radicalism in metal, as in the rebelliousness of it, is sometimes a little bit without cause or without aim?
Yeah, precisely that. Yeah. So I mean, like, you look at Mayhem's Death Crush. That's a radical fucking release. From everything from the cover where you got the two hands, in some fucking concentration camp, and to the music and the lyrics. That's a very radical thing, and that, to me, I wholeheartedly embrace that side of metal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do also believe in freedom of expression, and I don't think you should get fucking killed just because you want to play a certain type of music, because at the end of the day, we need that healthy expression and outlet to I think one of the best parts about metal in general and being an artist and performing this kind of music is that it helps you get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes by being in touch with your shadow side, as we tend to be when it comes to metal, you get to uncover a lot of very interesting truths about yourself, about the world in general. And, again, another reason why I am extremely passionate about what we do with this type of music, and that's why I think it's something that, those who do wish to pursue this path should have access to it. So that's why, it's a hill I will always choose to die upon, is that, is freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And another very big part of my message is always to make sure that the people over here don't shoot themselves in the foot and fuck themselves up and basically throw away their own rights. Because if you've been born and raised here, and if you've always had access to free speech and being able to express yourself properly, then perhaps you might not always appreciate what that means. And this is when things like censorship, in particular, can always lead down a totalitarianism path. And that's why, that's the thing I'm always sounding the alarm for.
along the road.
Exactly, yeah.
I do think it's interesting that it's a little bit like with communism, right? The only place where people are actively embracing communism and the idea of communism are places where communism has never ever been. It's never been the system of government. North America is a great example. The UK is a great example, but they've never had a communist government. They don't know what it's like to live under a communist government.
Bingo. Yep.
Go and speak to somebody from Romania. Go speak to somebody from Bulgaria. Speak to somebody from the Ukraine who's actually lived under that, and they will tell you it's the most fucking horrible thing on the face of the earth. You never want to experience it. They absolutely despise it. The Cuban refugees that go to, that go en masse to Florida. Why do you think Florida is a stronghold for Republicans and Ron DeSantis had such a great turnout in the election? Is because they see him as their buffer between, living the life that they want to live and the comunista. But it's kind of the same thing. Exactly what you said now about the censorship, inhibiting freedom of speech and stuff like that. It's because they've been spoiled and had it for all of their lives, that they now are taking it for granted and they want to almost bend and shape it to their whim. Which is, again, speaks to a real sense of entitlement. And we've spoken about that before. It's one of the biggest problems I think one of the root evils of the West is this ingrained sense of entitlement that's almost, it's so unhinged, it's almost pathological.
Yeah. I think Censorship is sort of like, I'm sure we must have spoken about this before, but to me censorship is a lot like using chemical warfare in war. And the reason why I compare it to that is because it's something that you're not supposed to use. But then when you use it, then you sort of broken the rule, and then the other side gets to use it.
Yeah.
And the thing is with censorship, yes, okay, so whatever it is that you stand for now, maybe for now it might seem okay that you get to censor and silence certain groups that you don't agree with. But there may come a time that those other groups might have the upper hand on you.
Yeah.
And what you don't want is to then be censored by them when that time comes. The whole point of free speech is that you get to have discussions with people that you don't agree with. That even if you don't like an idea, you still listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean that idea should not exist and whoever's saying it should be muted or put away and shunned. That's not how it should be. That defeats the whole fucking purpose. Then you may as well go live in a dictatorship. You know, now dictatorship doesn't mean that it only has to be right wing or left wing. No, it's that certain ideas need to be completely put aside and silenced. And that's not how democracy works. You know, and I know this is all very complex coming from a black metal fucking musician, but it's truth. This is human experience. We're all sharing this. And, you know,
You've also had a very unique lived experience, and you've got a very unique perspective on this that perhaps others, I wouldn't say perhaps, definitely others in the West don't have. And again, they would do well to listen to different perspectives because...
Sure.
Again, I see a lot of people steer, especially, you know, even in the metal scene, they seem to almost willfully want to go down this, you know, WEF, globalism 4.0, technocratic fascism, you know, future that is being prepared for us.
Yeah.
And they can't seem to understand that unless you start to take a stand against this now, this is it. This is going to be the final stand. They've gone through the motions of implementing various things that, you know, have been foiled and thwarted, and politicians have come in with a good sense to try and unpick it. Of course, they've then tried to ruin that politician completely, wreck their reputation, etc. But they learn from it. I mean, it's like anything, right? They learn from their mistakes. The virus gets stronger every time you try and, you know, inoculate yourself against it. They're just going to come with some other bullshit. Yeah. I mean, and the thing that I find is to be so egregious now, I don't know how closely you keep an eye on these things, but I know we exchange messages about this quite a lot.
Sure.
That whole idea of don't believe your lying eyes has now become so insane. There was an article the other day, I think it was in the New York Times. The headline read, "For black people, the climate is the new COVID." So it's like they have this toolbox, and it's like, okay, gender ideology, race, the climate, COVID. Okay, we're going to pick a couple and just throw it together and just see.
What was the context for this particular article that you're talking about? In what way were they actually saying? It was
basically that the climate emergency is worse in underprivileged neighborhoods.
Okay.
Which is fucking bullshit. I mean, it's like these. It's like trying to have a conversation with people about the heat waves in the Mediterranean. If you go onto Weather Underground and you compare the temperature today to the temperature 10 years ago, there is a point, like maybe a 2 degree difference. It's not, there isn't a huge difference. The reason why that they're reporting it as much as they're reporting it is the way that they've actually measured the weather, and at the BBC has changed. They're measuring the temperature on the ground rather than the ambient temperature in the air. Right. But like I said, any reputable weather station or weather source, you can go and look at it right now. Weather Underground has it at, like, I think I looked at it earlier in the week and it was 102 degrees Fahrenheit. And 10 years ago, it was something like 101 or it was like 98 or something like that. But it's summer. It's summer in the Mediterranean. It's hot. That hasn't changed. If they were in any way serious about it, why would the BBC send their weather correspondent flying 1,800 miles to Spain and back for one day? The equivalent of driving 1,500 miles in an internal combustion engine car. They're not serious about it. It's just propaganda. It's just bullshit. It's a psyop.
But this is the way I look at it. And this is quite scary, and it's frustrating, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. But this is something that's actually very clear to me now. And it's that whatever the powers that may be, want to report to the public, whatever that agenda and that direction is, it's not necessarily that it's all entirely false or that it's entirely based on a lie.
Yeah.
However, the version of truth will always be twisted to serve their agenda. So you want to talk about COVID? Yeah, COVID is a shitty virus to get. Yeah. It's not nice. I've had it multiple times. It's not good. You've had it. We've both had it before. It's not a good thing. But do we really need to lock down the entire world over
Absolutely not.
No, we did not.
No.
Do we need to kill everyone's businesses? Like, how many more people did we lose to mental health than we did to actual COVID itself? Mm-hmm. So, again, another thing. And you cannot ignore the absolute eradication of the middle class that took place as a result of this power shift.
The mass transfer of wealth that occurred during that time.
Precisely. And there's that. And then you want to talk about climate change. Okay. Pollution and the pollution that humans are causing this planet is undeniable. That is something that is absolutely the case, whether it's from our ways of factory farming. Now, this applies to both soy crops and the animal products.
Mostly soy crops.
Yes, because it doesn't give anything back to the earth and it's killing our soil.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about all the glyphosate, and all the shit that they're spraying over these things with airplanes. Like before, you used to have guys that would go around the crops and they would spray the crops, and they would do them individually. Now they're saving money, but just having one airplane go over it and then just spray the whole thing with bullshit. And that is then actually getting transferred to us, and it's killing our gut microbiome, And I think something like 95% of pregnant women in Canada were all suffering from this certain type of contamination, which is a direct result of I believe, grains that are
I didn't know about that.
That are polluted as a result of things like glyphosate and so on. So there's all these things, like pollution. You can't deny that, But then when you look at the bigger picture, it's like, okay, all right, fine, fair enough. What are we actually going to do about that? Well, what they're doing is that they're making it be about this one very specific agenda, which when you look at the bigger picture, it is, again, climate change is very obviously a way of gaining further control over the masses. That's to gain more control over your freedom of movement. And, and even like the electric cars, I get it. When you go on the street and then there's some cars going past and you got the fumes, it's fucking shit. That sucks. That is pollution. That's not good. But then on the other hand, you think of the amount of pollution that they cause in the oceans, which is arguably just as bad, if not worse. All the fish that they murder and slaughter just to harvest the batteries that then they're later using in these cars.
The child slavery.
And the child slavery in Congo. Yeah. So this is like, and another thing here, all right? So that's the COVID and climate change. And now we can talk about aliens too, right? That you're going to see a lot more of in the coming future. And that's not to say that aliens are not real, or if they are real. My personal take is, of course, that's something that exists. However, this is again another truth that down the line they're going to take, and with the technology that we have, with whatever techniques that they've got in their possession, that's again another thing that they can use in their control to say that, oh yeah, we're being invaded by aliens, so we all need to unite, don't leave your house, don't do this and that, and all of this is gonna happen. So it's always that there is a truth in the midst of all of these things, but they will take that truth and they'll manipulate it to simply just gain further power.
Well,
and
what
control.
They do, and this comes back to why, when we were talking off, before we started recording, I was talking about my view on government, and this is why I believe government should be cut down to the bare bones.
Sure.
The purpose of government should be to provide the most basic essential services and maintain law and order. That's it. It should have no other bearing in my life. However, governments in the West have become much like governments in China and places like that, where they increasingly become overbearing, more involved in your life. And exactly to what you just said, they take every possible opportunity they can to increase their control. Yeah. So what they then also do very cleverly is through the media apparatus and through the useful idiots, they will take something like climate change, and if you dare question the pervasive narrative, it doesn't matter whether you believe that climate change is real and that certain things need to change about how we operate as human beings, they go climate denier. Yeah. How dare you don't believe in climate change?
Science denier.
Science denier. Yeah. I believe in climate change, but I don't believe in a lot of the dross that they're telling me, and I don't believe it because the contradiction in their behavior suggests to me that they don't believe it either. I think I said this to you when we were last talking. If somebody says to me, Jackie, if you go outside, there's going to be radioactive spray that's going to come down and turn you into one of the monsters from The Last of Us. And then I go, shit, fuck, that's really serious. Okay, I'll stay in my house. And then literally 5 minutes later, I see them running around outside, laughing and screaming and carrying on. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to go, Jesus, something's amiss here. Now, if someone tells me, Jackie, like that moron Stanley Johnson, Boris Johnson's dad, he kind of, he had a Freudian slip on GMTV or something like that, where he said something to the effect of, well, if someone gets to the airport and they decide, well, this year you're just not going to be able to go on holiday because you've exceeded your mileage, that's just part of the plan. It's like, okay, so you can tell me I'm not allowed to go on holiday. I must stop driving a car. I mean, a modern manufactured car that, again, there's a lot of studies that suggest that newly manufactured ICE cars are far less polluting than electric cars in its totality because of how much pollution goes into creating an electric car. I'm not allowed to drive a car. I'm stop eating meat. I have to eat the bugs. And then you fly with your private jet to Davos and you're eating steak and you cruise around in a cavalcade of 5 fucking Range Rovers. I mean, that dickhead, Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, he took his dog for a walk a mile away from his house and went in a 4-car cavalcade to that woman who's the politician in Spain it was flanked by, I think, 2 Range Rovers behind her, 1 Range Rover in front of her, and she's on a bicycle because she's trying to offset her carbon footprint. I mean, Jesus Christ, what drives me crazy is no one looking at that and just going, this is so stupid now. This is like an episode of The Simpsons. This to me is indicative of how effective the PSYOP has been. What they've gotten people to do is believe the most obviously insane, contradictory, illogical garbage on the face of the earth because people look at it and go, yeah, that makes total sense. Wow, she's so brave.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's one thing, I mean, to anyone living in 2023 now, one of the best things you can do is to just unplug from any kind of mainstream news outlets because it's all just propaganda and manipulation.
One of the best things you can do is you can develop a healthy sense of intellectual curiosity and start figuring out for yourself how things work.
Sure.
That's the most critical thing because that's one of their main weapons is they realize the populace is completely and utterly ignorant to how most things work. Finance is the worst, right? Kids in school are never raised with any degree of financial acumen. They don't know how to manage a bank account. They don't know how to manage investments. They don't know how to manage their pensions. The average pension pot in the UK is £64,000. £64,000 in private pension. You know what that's going to get you as a retiree? About £300 a month, if you're lucky. Yeah. Then that added to your, I think it's about £1,100 a month in your state pension. And the state pension, by the way, is a very good chance that's going to go away. Now, how are you supposed to live on £1,400 a month? So then they get to retirement age. They've made the wrong decisions, not people like us. They fuck their own lives up, and then they go, well, this is unfair. It's not fair that I'm in this situation.
It's very much like the whole pension thing. I mean, I understood this when I first moved to the UK, because Iran's a very different system. And in some ways, I can see the benefit and the downsides of both. But obviously, I think it's very lucky that in the UK, you get things like free healthcare. You get things like, just the fact that you even have access to something like benefits or even minimum wage. In Iran, you don't have a minimum wage.
Under Smith, all of those things get scrapped immediately.
Yeah, you see you see the conditions that some of the constructions workers work in is fucking bad. It's slavery. So in one sense of the word, it's great that you have those sort of cushions here, if you will. But at the same time, one of the main things that I think I recognized immediately in the system here was that, I mean, just the whole pension thing, for example, it's this weird thing of just keeping you in your own place so that you're comfortable. It very much reminds me of the mechanism of the hamster running on the wheel whilst chasing the cheese when the cheese is like sort of right next to it. That's kind of what that is to me, because it's really, like you said, it's not that much. Yet,
well, it's not a livable amount, and the thing about it is, like I said, it's just an example of what I meant about this ignorance in the population. But the population is conditioned into never bothering to figure out how stuff works.
Well, exactly. I think that's what I'm talking about. And perhaps, got to play the devil's advocate here as well. As I often do. But let's say you are a governing power and you are in position. Maybe you don't want people to fucking figure the whole system out and then start growing out of it and then start going out and doing their own thing. Maybe like a sheep herder, you want to bring them all together and you want to impose control over all of them, And you got to remember that the government, or people who are in charge, they're people at the end of the day. It's just fucking humans, So it's the same thing as all of us.
Yeah.
Which is, whilst always we have the potential for absolute brilliance, for innovation, for creativity, for compassion, for arts, creativity, all of these things, we also have the potential to be a bunch of dumb motherfucking idiots. So it's the same thing, and we're always prone to failures in that regards. And we're always prone to greed. So I think it's important to sort of have that balanced view of things in general, But this is also why, you want to be careful about how much of the ownership of your life you're going to put in the hands of other people, which is, I think, again, another point of why critical thinking is so important. Like for us, I'll make an example, It doesn't make fucking sense for us to be doing what we're doing in Trivax, where we're traveling all these places, and we're playing shows. We're just going through all kinds of shit just to go on stage for 45 minutes to an hour, just to make noise out of these amplifiers and shit. And then we come down, and then that's kind of the main part of it done.
I was going to bring this up in a second. You seem like you're well on your way to becoming the Salman Rushdie of black metal, mate.
I'm not sure if, I guess, the Israel video has had a lot of insane feedback.
Yeah.
That's overwhelming. Have you seen how many fucking...
Yeah,
we've had a lot of fucking...
I also saw the piece that you posted yesterday about it being played. It was in front of the embassy in Germany, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's fucking wild, man. It's kind of like, it's a little overwhelming upon initial inspection, but this is exactly what we do. This is why I was saying that financially doing what we do makes no fucking sense. But tell you what, it's our life. This is what we choose to do. We've got a message and we're going to fucking do it. Doesn't matter what you throw in our way, whether it's going to be some fucking lockdowns or whether it's going to be an Islamic fucking government. We're going to keep on doing what the fuck we're doing. You're not going to tell us what to do. And that's been our message since day one. And that is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying taking control and ownership of your own life. That's what we are doing. Every time we're taking a fucking 12-hour drive somewhere just to do a gig in front of, 100 people, that is us taking ownership of our life, of our journey, of our legacy, of our story as human beings, okay? It's a lot to be an alive human being, right? There might be 7 billion cunts out there, that's fine. But just the simple fact that every single person out there, yourself included, all of us, we are all the sperm that reached the egg. That already, even just statistically speaking, is a very rare thing to happen. So the fact that you're alive, you get to look around, you can speak, and we exist in this fascinating echo chamber is a fucking blessing. That's awesome. That's great. Right? But let's take fucking control of it. Let's live it how we want to live it. And I think, that's that's the thing for us, is that we're doing this because we want to, and if there's a certain risk involved with that, we're willing to pay it, because the price of that is freedom, and freedom is always worth the price, as far as I'm concerned. So when you're saying I'm the new Salman Rushdie of black metal scene.
Well, I'm kind of saying that half jokingly, but I was going to ask you, I mean, do you have, when you see stuff like your music being played in front of the embassy, do you get nervous and think, you know, I might start getting in the eye line of a couple of psychos here? What's your what's the reaction, or what's the thought process? Because you've also seen, you know, you've seen many sides to that coin, right? And it was, what was interesting for me is having had conversations with you. I think your view on religion, I think you and I probably have similarities in our views of the respective religions we've come from, right? I've come from Christianity, you've come from Islam. Me personally, there's a lot of stuff about Christianity that I dislike intensely, and I don't like herd mentality. I don't like any of, you know, I don't like the hypocrisy and, you know, all of that sort of thing. But there are some fundamental tenets about it that I do appreciate, and that I do actually think have merit and value in society. And I think like what I picked up from you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I felt you had the same feelings towards Islam. But the flip side, just back to what we were talking about, just seeing your music getting put out there, so much attention on the music video. Like, do you have any concerns about some lunatic seeing it and deciding, okay, we're gonna make this guy's life a living hell, or what? What's your thoughts?
Okay, that's a very good question. It's a very valid one, but I'll say this.
You're gonna jump up and do like a promo and into the camera and say, "Bring it on!"
I'll do an Iron Sheik. Oh, Togan! No, I'll. You know, jokes aside, any kind of threat that you can imagine, I've already come to terms with that when I first started this journey, when I was still in Iran. When not a single fucking person even knew who Trivax were. We hadn't even recorded any music. I've already gone through those possibilities. And yeah, it's true, as you get older, you become a little bit more sensible. But still, my message remains the same. It's that of freedom. If anyone wants to stand in the way of my freedom, they can get fucked, right? And, you know, sometimes you'll be in a position where those that might stand against you might actually have the more power. But that's when the message itself becomes stronger than what you are, and it becomes bigger than just one person's safety and security. So I think that in a sense, ever since maybe I was about, I think maybe around the time I was 15 years old, when we did those first Trivax shows in Iran, I don't know if you've seen the video, but
I haven't done.
There's a video of me. People can go look it up on YouTube. It's a video of 15-year-old Shayan sat in the, 16 years old. I think it was not long after I turned 16. Sat in the basement of the Trivax rehearsal place in Tehran, in Mini City, actually. That's where we were. And this was the day before our very first live show, which was of course illegal. We weren't supposed to do it, but we fucking did it, and it was a triumph. But I say in that video, I say that one of the things that could possibly happen is that the police could come in and take us, and we might be completely fucked. And during that show, obviously, there's the story of how, this is the one I talked about on the Metallica podcast, you know, where how we were playing, and then I look up, and then I see this giant smoke coming at us, which I thought was the police. I thought that was tear gas at first. And when I saw that, I was like, right, fucking let's go. Come on, you bunch of bitches. You know, like I was ready to go, right? And of course, I would have had no power. I'm just a fucking 16-year-old kid with my guitars. When I say I was ready to go, I meant I was ready to go. Depart. You know what I mean? From the material world. That was my mindset. And then it turned out to be just some fire that the kids caused because they got excited and we had to evacuate, and no one actually got hurt from it, you know. But that was like a sort of a thing where the world offered me an opportunity to choose freedom and my path over my own mortality. So I've been lucky that I've had that ever since the very beginning. So this is, of course, it's a scary thing, but whatever those threats are, whatever that is, I'll try and be smart about it. But at the end of the day, for the last, say, 13, 14 years, I've already lived with the acceptance of those consequences.
That's a possibility, yeah.
Right? So when I see the Trivax music video, I mean, this morning I woke up and it's had thousands of views on YouTube. And they actually, this really famous Iranian activist, Nazanin Noor, she shared the fucking song and she was like, can you guys go like vote for this on Metal Hammer or something? And she's got like 300,000 followers on Instagram, and she's going on doing all these podcasts. She was actually on PBD not long ago.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So say you're going to get on BBD soon, mate.
Probably. I don't know.
No, well, you know what?
But this is what I'm saying, just to quickly bring that back, is that when I see all of these things happening, and there's this crazy attention around Trivax at the moment, of course I know that, this could be dangerous, that my security could be, fucked. And what I do is I'll try and be more careful around certain things, but that is never gonna fucking stop me. That's never gonna fucking make me rein in my message. Fuck no. The whole purpose of me coming here was to do this.
Yeah.
So it would be so stupid. It would be a betrayal of every person who has helped me get where I am now, as well as myself, my own family, everyone around me. It would be a betrayal to them, and it would be a betrayal to my own personal higher power.
Yeah.
If I was to throw this away, just in fear of, what if people might get upset, I might be in danger. No, fuck off. This is what I say. This is my message. I'm gonna fucking stand by it. So, that's the truth of it. I am not going to stop.
Not to mention a betrayal to Into the Necrosphere. There was actually a question I wanted to ask you about that, because you and I spoke offline. I think we may even have spoken about it on an episode where I said, like, I couldn't wrap my head around why you guys weren't being picked up by a label. Because I thought, A, the music is excellent. That's the first most important thing. The music is top notch, really, really good. B, you guys have such a marketable story. Like you are a fucking publicist's dream. Like, how is nobody seeing this? So when you then get to a point where on the eve of now putting out your record, which I think when you and Sully spoke about it as being, this is almost like the rebirth of Trivax, I totally agree. I mean, I think Sin is a good album, but this is on a completely different level. I mean, when people hear it, they're going to be absolutely blown away. But on top of that, it sounds like a new band. Like, I've also, having had the pleasure of knowing you over the last several years, I know how you've evolved and how you've changed as a person. And I want to touch on that in a second, but my original question, is it validating for you to kind of see that level of attention, the build-up, the hype around the band happen despite, I guess, the naysayers, or despite the people that didn't believe it in your journey to get to this point? Do you understand what I mean?
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's like Kenny Powers on Eastbound and Down, when he, when the crowd is finally cheering for him in episode or season 2, he's like, finally, motherfuckers. It's like,
finally, motherfuckers. No, I feel like that now. But at the cost of sounding arrogant, all I will say is that it feels right to now be getting this attention. Because here's the thing. All of those times, all of the millions of emails I probably sent out that no one ever responded to, that no one was ever interested in, and all of the times where promoters were getting in touch with us, trying to purposely give us shitty deals, and just like insulting stuff, like we've earned this big name for ourselves, and they're trying to put us down and shit like that, or like all of the times where we hit obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. There's one thing that remained the same, And it's that I never stop believing in what we do. I never stop believing in our message. I never stop believing in myself and my band and the power of what Trivax is truly capable of. I never stopped believing. And now I am gratefully so seeing it pan out. But that's why it just feels right. It doesn't feel like, oh, wow, you know, it feels nice, it's great. I'm very grateful. I'm humbled by the response that we're getting. But as I keep saying, I expected this.
Yeah.
You know, and even if this would have never happened, I still would have carried on. Okay? Even if this crazy acknowledgement that we've just had, just purely in the last few weeks, I would have still carried on. So I think this is really just a receipt and just a sign of, yeah, there you go. This is, you are where you are meant to be. And I honestly think think that the wait that needed to occur, it was all for a reason. And I'm just glad that we stuck to our guns and that we waited until now. Because another thing, you know, the date for this video, just as an example, right? The date for this video coming out was sort of accidental in the sense that us and the label and the PR guy, like they suggested the date to me and they said, oh, we should release it around this time. Do you think this would work? And then I kind of thought about it and I was like, yeah, actually that works. We'll have so and so parts of the edit done by then. That gives us enough time to promote and then it works well in conjunction with the album release. What I didn't realize was the fact that the music video got released on the first day of Muharram. Muharram is a month in Shia Islam, which is the month of everyone committing flagellation and mourning the death of the third descendant of Muhammad, Imam Hussein, who died in Karbala. And that whole flagellation of beating yourself with a chain, that's the month where that happens. And that is exactly the scene that we implemented into the music video. And the video happened to come out on the first day of the month of those flagellations happening all across the world in Shia countries. You can't make that up.
No, definitely not. You went to town in the music video as well, mate. I saw the photo, the aftermath of the photos. I mean, it's like you weren't playing around with the flagellation.
No. That whole scene, I mean, I can get into the concept of it if you like and why I chose to do that. It's something I've actually had in mind for many years to do. But when we actually shot that flagellation scene during that slow breakdown riff that we've got, I think we were beating ourselves for maybe about 4 hours.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, in the middle of this barren area that we found, actually, which I think was like the landscape was perfect for it as well.
Derby Town Centre.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in fucking Dudley, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, that was a lot of work. You know, we all left with very sore backs at the end of the day. But I wanted it to be real. You know, I actually built and handmade all of the chains that we had myself. But you know, that was again, I had a lot of reasons for why I wanted to do it real rather than just do it for the sake of a shoot. But
you get it. It's good that you did that because the intensity of the music video is very palpable. Because there's that's kind of, I've unfortunately never seen you guys live, but you get that sense when
we were gonna have to fix that, man. You're missing most of the experience. Like Trivax, the whole purpose of the experience is to see it live. Are you coming to Cosmic Void?
When is it?
It's in September.
Well, I don't know.
15th to 17th of September.
When is it? Is it in London?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might come for that.
Yeah, I think you should, man.
Yeah. This was actually these Reaperfest shows. This is the first metal I've seen live since the pandemic.
Really?
I went to see Prodigy last year, and then I admitted this to Phil the other day. The only other thing I saw, not by choice, we went to the Newbury races last weekend, and afterwards Tom Jones played.
Okay.
and I was told I have to stay, and I thought, well,
that's all right. I'd watch Tom Jones.
Dude, you know what? I was very pleasantly surprised. I was like, well, he sang, he sang some of the hit song, didn't like that, but he sang like a Leonard Cohen cover that was really, really good. He did a Bob Dylan cover that was very, very good.
Cohen, man. Yeah.
And I was like, this dude is 83 years old and he's fucking great. He sounds great. His band sounds great. His interaction and his command of the audience is great. And I thought to myself, you're a living legend and you're doing a show to a parking lot full of fucking idiots and horse racing. Like, you must feel really annoyed about this, but he treated it like it was like the best gig of his life.
Sure.
I was like, this dude is I said, genres aside, this guy is a consummate professional. I've rarely been so pleasantly surprised by something, that I thought was going to be the worst experience of my life. I was ready to get my headphones on and start listening to music. But now, one question, and we can start to wrap things up, but I've mentioned before, I've known you now for a while. You have evolved an awful lot in the time that I've known you. And it's been awesome to see how much of that evolution and how much of the way that you have kind of shifted your mindset and become, how I would describe it if to you, like as an outside observer, you become an incredibly more focused person than you were when I first met you. Like, you were always very high energy, very ambitious, but it's like it was like if you think of it like a beam of light that was sort of, flaring out in all directions. It's kind of come closer and closer together until it's sort of this pinpoint precision laser. And that's how I would describe you now. And as I said, I love it because I love that kind of energy. I love being around people like that.
Yeah.
It makes it, I was thinking about it last night when I was watching Ultha, not to go off topic with this context to it. And I was thinking to myself, like, when it comes to the podcast, how biased am I actually to my friends and the music that they make? And I thought to myself, very. And there's no point in even trying to hide it. I love when my friends do something and they do it really, really well.
Sure.
So seeing Ultha was fucking incredible. I know seeing you guys would be great. Hearing the album, the first time I heard it, which has been a while back now, I thought, fuck me, this is... When this comes out, people are going to absolutely fucking lose it. But the original question I wanted to ask in this very roundabout way, how much of that focus, how much of that evolution of your mindset, your personality, do you feel has made it onto the album or is reflected on this new music?
Oh, this is a great question. So, Eloah Burns Out, obviously there's the concept of the album, there's the lyrics, there's everything like that, and there's the sound evolution. But what it really does, it captures and truly encapsulates this absolute period of transformation, not just for me personally, but for Sully, but for Matt, our drummer, for all of us in our personal lives. Like, we went through this insane cycle during the recording of this album. And obviously I had a lot of very, very tough times when I wrote the album, because actually, and I hope this is not taking away from the album experience, but the material itself is actually very old. So the material, for example, Azrael, which now everyone has heard, I wrote that song before Sin came out.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And same thing with Alpha Predator. And there's another song called Twilight of Death, which has a wild fucking story behind it. But that song came out a week after Sin came out. Not came out, but I created it a week.
Yeah.
I didn't even create it. It just channeled through, And The Serpent's Gaze I wrote in 2017. The last song that I wrote is Dar Akhar Dunya, which is the final song. And that I wrote in 2018. So they're actually very old songs.
Yeah, so the youngest song on the record is 5 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, that whole recording process and during the time I was writing those songs, that was a time where I sort of changed the entire trajectory of my life. Because that was a time where I was very unhappy with things. And unfortunately, I can't go into details. I can tell you personally, but there's a very, without putting too much attention and focus on that, there are details I unfortunately cannot share publicly about why that time was difficult for me. But that was still a period where I hated everything so much, where I had two choices. One was to change. The other one was to perish and just end everything. And I only had those two options, okay? I chose to change. And that came with the physical transformation, with a different approach to the band, with a different mindset, with a different level of focus, with everything. Everything changed from there. It took some time to implement those changes, but where I am sat now is because of the changes that I decided to make back in like halfway through 2017, where I realized, wow, okay, I'm not happy with this anymore. So what this album then encapsulates is the collective experiences of all of us, because we all went through a lot of different changes. You know, like I might have written the music, but all of these experiences are into that album. The situation, you know, like when we recorded Eloah Burns Out, we were all with our ex-girlfriends and everything at the time, you know, and like the changes, like I know that that's probably like such a fucking mundane bullshit thing, like who cares? But that was like, you know, there was a lot that happened there, you know, which is, it's difficult for me to explain it because there's a lot of details, you know.
Dude, I mean, you know, but I think when it comes to women, there's no doubting that the advice is if you want to fuck a man's life up, have him marry the wrong woman. That's the quickest way to ruin your life. I wouldn't even just say marrying, is being with and investing in the wrong woman. You know, Mike calls them bad pennies. I just call them fucking bitches. But we've all made that mistake.
No, I have to agree, and actually, so this is an album where there's transformation all over it, you know. So, and I mean, the name of the album is Eloah Burns Out, you know, which Eloah is the singular of Elohim. And so we're referring to a singular deity, which is actually sort of in metaphorical alignment with our sun burning out and taking out the entire solar system in it. So the whole album is about death. Every song on the title, every song on this record is a manifestation of death. Azrael is the angel of death. Alpha Predator is a perspective of the murderer, and you know, it's the perspective of basically Cain. And Twilight of Death is the death of the individual. Memento Mori is remember that you will die. The last song on the album is Dar Achar Dunya, which is at the end of the world, which describes the ending of the world and God dying. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that death is never simply just the end of something, but however, it's the change of something. Because it's just like how energy never gets created or destroyed, it simply changes format. And I observe death to be of the same thing. It's a change in format. So in a very beautiful, accidental, metaphorical way, this album, which is dedicated to death, it's the death of our older selves and what we have now become as a result of it. And of course, I'm very excited and very intrigued to see what the other side of the coin now has for us. But it really is just about transformation. So to your point, that's basically what it is. You know, it's that transformation and that whole process is starting from one place and then ending up in another place. Where it's no longer possible to revert that anymore because it's already out there. And I also actually think that listening to this album will probably have the same effect for the listener as well. Because once you start listening to this, and by the time it finishes and you hear that last little thing at the end of the last song, you will realize you're in a different place than you were when you started listening to it. So that's what it is, transformation. And this is just Yeah, this is just a receipt of it, really.
Yeah. Last question. I picked up on the conversation with Sully that you're busy training to be a PT.
I am. That's right.
Is that going to be a full-time gig, or what's your plans with it?
Ideally, yes, because I'm not very good at working for people.
Yeah. When's your birthday?
15th of November.
All right. Okay. No. So you're not an Aries.
I'm an Aries moon.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how much stock I place in that, but one thing that I did always read about Aries that I thought was hysterical is like problems with authority, which I have always had. So.
Yeah.
So PT full time will be the.
That would be ideal. Yeah, but I mean, I want to do this. I'm really glad you asked me about this actually, because I'm actually. I've actually started getting a few clients now, and people that I'm helping out, and I'm going to try and gather as much results as I can from them. But the thing is that for me, I was thinking about this a lot, and I'm very fond of universal exchanges, I'm very fascinated by the idea of even like money and things like that. We might look at it as like, oh, this mundane thing, but I think it's a fascinating thing how there's this idea that you get to have an exchange for something, and that can be anything. I think that's really powerful. And I think there is like a universal, actual like spiritual wave to such a thing. So I was thinking to myself, where it's like, rather than just want to be rich, or rather than just make a lot of money, but it's like, well, why do such a thing? What do you have to exchange for that? And I was thinking about this because a lot of people, they just want to take shortcuts and they just want to do this and that. It's like, oh, maybe I'll win the lottery. Like, I've never thought about winning the lottery in my life. And I don't like a lot of people are like, oh, the only way I'll get rich is if I win the lottery. And I always think, fuck you. I do not relate to your thinking at all. Get the fuck away from me. And this is most people around me who think like this. So, and most people everywhere, because no one has the concept of like, oh yeah, you could do well, like outside of that. But for me, it was a thing of, well, what can I do that's genuinely valuable? And what can I do that I'm actually passionate about? Let's say it's outside of music. And I thought, well, I'm genuinely passionate about helping people get better, about making better human beings. That's the reason why I do the podcast. That's why I even have conversations like this, because I'm getting the opportunity to express myself, and take in my impressions of your side of things as well. And that already is rewarding to me. But at the end of the day, my inbox is filled with people sending me messages saying, oh man, when I listened to you talk about this episode, whatever, which was like something I talked about a year ago, they'd be like, that really helped me. And now actually I'm going to the gym and I'm doing this and that. I've actually started doing this. So I'm constantly getting this really wonderful influx of positivity that comes my way, even though, which is like black metal musician, it's like, I must be in a minority here, surely. But that to me is very powerful, and it's a beautiful thing. And if I can directly impact and help people become better people, then that's an extremely rewarding thing. So why not actually create a career out of doing something like that? Because to me, I get when it comes to physical exercise, when it comes to diet, when it comes to getting in good shape, one of the reasons why, like you mentioned, I seem so much more focused, so much better than I did, say, 2-3 years ago when we first did our first episode together, January 2021, that was, I think. It was just after Into the Void came out. And, obviously at that time I'd already made a lot of changes, but one of the reasons why I've improved and transformed positively as much as I have is purely because I've been consistent with my training, with my diet, and with my regimens, and getting more disciplined, and now I've even implemented the cold thing for the last 6-7 months, and that's been a whole life-changing thing of its own. So for me, I'm like, well, look at how fucking good this makes you feel. Holy shit. I never knew this before I started that. All that depression and all that like anxiety and stuff. You can fix that. You might not permanently fix it, but it's about keeping a steady balance.
You can certainly alleviate many of the symptoms. It's like, again, I think with depression, Andrew Tate said something that I thought was brilliant about depression. He said, a guy messaged him and said, I feel depressed, I'm going to kill myself. He said, okay, I want you to do me a favor for a month, work out as hard as you can, get a six-pack, and once you've got a six-pack, come back to me and tell me if you're still depressed. It's like, and you know, depression is not as simple of a problem to solve as that, but my belief and observation has always been, when it comes to depression in particular, the world is too quick to jump to a chemical solution for what is fundamentally a problem with nutrition, sleep, exercise. If somebody tells me they're depressed, and the first thing that I hear is, I don't sleep, I drink, I smoke, I don't ever exercise, I don't really ever get any movement, I sit in front of my computer and play games all day, my supplementation is terrible, I eat like crap. It's like, well, dude, you are literally setting yourself up to be a broken down vessel.
Yeah.
So once those things are in place, if you still feel depressed, it's a serious problem. It needs treatment.
And listen, man, there was once a time, right, back in 2016, where I was, 118, 19 kilos? I'm 75 as we speak, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know. I saw the photo the other day.
Thank you. I did a fitness photo shoot yesterday, so I've been cutting down really hard just to get prepared for that.
For the shoot?
Photo shoot for my PT services.
Oh, cool.
Funnily enough. So, yeah. But basically, that was a cool experience because I had to prepare for it, and I had to do like carb loading and take all the right supplements and take all the beetroot. And obviously, I'm doing this naturally as well. I've never touched steroids or anything in my life. But the thing of it was that there was a time back in 2016 where I would sit down in bed, and people close to me at that time would say, "Oh, Shayan, you said you were going to go for a run in the woods, or you were going to go for walks and, you know, enjoy yourself whilst you're here." And I would be like, "Nah, leave me alone. Don't you understand? I'm so depressed. I don't even want to get out of here. I don't even want to live here. Like, I don't even want to live anymore. And you're telling me to go for a walk?" If I had known that all I was doing by saying that was letting myself down.
Well, was digging the hole even deeper.
Exactly, by perpetuating the circumstances. If I had known that all it would have taken was for me to just go and fucking do a bunch of bicep curls and just stop eating shit, you know, try eliminating seed oils, try eating more meat, and try getting protein, try getting more sunlight, try getting more fresh air, get less blue light exposure at nighttime, get good sleep, and actually try to have a bit more discipline and cycles around having sex as well. Because if you're coming too much, you're losing all the zinc in your body, you know. So that's why
you need to supplement with zinc, aggressively supplement with zinc.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is that once I did that, it actually helped. Yeah. And then my nails turned back to normal. I was like, oh, there you go. I'm jizzing too much. That was the problem. So anyway,
what out of curiosity, what supplements do you take at the moment?
Very simple, actually. I don't take loads. Well, probably by normal people standards, I don't take loads. I just take omega-3, basically cod liver oil, and I make sure it's not mixed in with soybean oil, nothing like that.
Yeah.
I like to have L-theanine. I usually have it with my caffeine. Roughly about 2 or 3 hours after I've actually woken up. That's also a good one to have before sleep as well. It can help. I have magnesium, and I have vitamin D. I have probiotics.
How many IUs of vitamin D?
Well, generally speaking, you actually need about 5,000 a day, but that's, I think, too much to get from supplementation alone. So supplementation, I probably have about 1,000. I'll tell
you mine in a second.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so just stuff like that. But the thing is as well, a lot of people jump ship and they're like, okay, I'm like this, so if I start taking supplements, everything will get better. Yeah, maybe, but what a lot of people I think just need to look at is just eliminate some of the crap from what they're eating first. Because a lot of the food that you're eating, you know, like, it's the one thing that I get, I won't disclose who I'm currently working with, but they're supposed to be in charge of people's health. Let's just say that. And you get all these fucking workers that on a fucking, so it's someone's like leaving party, or someone just got married, or someone just fucking popped their first kid or whatever. And they're coming here and then they're leaving all these cookies and chocolate and all this fucking crap on the table as a form of gratitude. It's like, you idiots. This is doing way more fucking harm to you than this doing any good. And it's like, it's this culture of consumerism that is surrounding this, It's like the thing with the fucking COVID vaccines. It's like, oh yeah, come get a jab and then you get a fucking free burger, and fries. It's like, what are we doing here?
Like what is going on? Brick, I can't even remember his surname now. Peter something or other. That dickhead doctor who was saying that RFK and Joe
Peter
Rogan
Otez.
Peter Otez. Yeah. And when he was on Joe Rogan, there's that very famous clip of him saying he's basically a junk foodaholic, and he doesn't do any exercise. It's like, so you want to talk to me about my health and say that if I don't take the vaccine, I'm a scumbag, this, that, and the other. But you admit that you don't do any exercise. You admit that you can't get the basics around healthcare maintenance correct.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm I can't talk because I do like to indulge in certain things. I've never been somebody who's drunk excessively. Never. I was actually last night when we were going back from the venue, there was this fucking idiot who was standing puking by the side of the road, and I looked at it and I said to Paige, I don't understand how somebody does that and doesn't feel a deep sense of shame and failure. I said, I once got so drunk that I got sick. I said, I felt so terrible about myself after that. I promised myself never fucking ever again. But I love red wine. So I have like a glass of red wine probably once a day.
The problem with that is that it's culturally accepted, and not only is it accepted, it's encouraged.
Yeah.
Okay. And I used to live that, I used to get drunk until I mean, Jackie, back in, obviously I'm sober now.
Yeah.
I never had an addiction problem with any substance, but I always had an abusive problem because I'm always like, I'm curious. I'm always trying to find out what's behind the veil of something. So I'm always like trying to push through and get as much of something as possible to transform. It seems to be my natural inclination to want to transform.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing that my parents never thought I was a girl. So the thing that for me was that I think I had 2 alcohol poisonings in the space of 9 months between 2015 and 2016, right? And that's just because I thought it's cool. First of all, I thought it was cool because I was rebelling against Iran somehow because they've outlawed it over there. Now it's like, it's the one thing where I don't think religious reasons should do it, but I think alcohol is literally one of the worst poisons that exists in today's world. As you know, I'm very pro psychedelics. I'm actually taking DMT in 2 weeks for the first time in 8 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I don't know.
This is the last time you'll see Cheyenne.
Bye.
the way it is now. I do agree with you. Alcohol's a poison, but I do think. I think moderation is not. I've never felt physically bad or in any way like my performance at the gym is compromised. My performance at work is compromised because I like one glass of wine a night.
Yeah.
But I can also see the slippery slope of it getting out of hand, and if you're not disciplined with it.
What I'm talking about, absolutely. What I'm referring to is that you live in a culture where you do feel horrible after doing it, but then you nenever blame it because everyone else is doing it.
There's no
and it's accepted and it's encouraged, if anything, and it's the thing of, oh wow, I feel shit, that's terrible. Okay, I'll do it again next weekend, and then you just keep doing it.
You keep friends about it. It's like it becomes something to brag about.
Because we all need to have fun, like this whole system, this sort of, just to bring the conversation full circle, what we were talking about the pension system and things like that here. This is another thing, is that you work Monday to Friday, a shitty job that you don't like, but then to put up with the fact that you don't like it, over the weekend you go out and then you get so absolutely plastered, so it's like you hit reset button again. So you throw away all of the, all the fucking money that you earned at like bullshit, and then you obviously pay with your health on something like that. You pay with your mental health, find yourself fucking sleeping next to some cunt you don't even know who that is, who that person's been with, who is this? You find yourself in this absolutely destructive cycle, and you just keep going over and over and over. And meanwhile, whilst you're going through that, you're easily being controlled. You're being controlled by your ways of consumerism. Whilst you're going through that, you're never going to be able to go and exceed in your life. You're never going to be able to achieve things outside of that periphery. But once you start cleaning those things out, once you start making changes one by one, saying, okay, well, I don't need this anymore. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to give my body what it truly needs, which is proper nutrition, all the minerals, all the vitamins, all the protein, very important. You start giving it that, and then you realize that, oh, okay, now hang on, I can control this thing. This ship is mine. I can take control of my own life. So, sorry, just a thing there as well. The main reason why I want to become a PT is not to project my own ideologies and my own opinions at people, but rather give people the tool to control their own life. Because this is one very common thing that happens with gym, and this is why so many entrepreneurs are all into fitness. And this is because, and it doesn't always have to be that way, but this is because once you learn what you're capable of doing within your own vessel, within your own body, then you realize that you've got the control to do whatever you want to the outside. And you can take reins of your own life. And that's the only thing that I preach. That's the only thing that I say people should do. And that's the main reason why I've discovered that to be my purpose in life, to project that into the world, that take control of your own life, take responsibility for what you do, take responsibility for what you say. If you face any kind of adversary, learn to reflect on what it is that you have said that's caused this adversary, but also learn to stand up for it, if that's still something that you truly believe in. And that's my message.
That was roughly what I was going to say. And I was going to say, one of the things when we talk about the societal ills and how easy it is to manipulate and lead society, if you live a life of zero accountability, it's very easy to slip into a life of resentment. And that's one of the things I see an awful lot of in the outside world. And that resentment is something that's very easy for the politically predatory or the elitist class to take advantage of. And they do it on both sides of the aisle, right? So the resentment over the life that you believe you are owed, even though you've not done the work to actually deserve it. You've not either adapted to the times, you've not studied hard enough, you've not worked hard enough, whatever the case may be. The fringes of the right come in and they go, oh, it's the migrants that are to blame. And so then you've got a subsection of these idiots that go, they taken my jobs. And then on the other,
they took our jobs.
Exactly. And on the other side, you go, oh, it's the capitalists that are to blame. And you go, corporate greed. It's like, actually, neither are to blame. You are to blame. You are to blame for the situation that you're in. And you see it manifest in simple things like this is a hard truth, sadly, that many people don't want to understand about modern society. But this thing that people want to live as singletons until they're in their 40s and 50s, I'm very sorry, but you can't expect to be single and live in the nice house and have the nice car that your parents had, because those two people pooled their resources together. That is why they were in the position that they were in. Economically, it's now harder, especially in the West with inflation.
It is. Yeah.
You are, so you are much, much better off being with somebody else. If you choose to be single, that's absolutely fine. I was single for 4 years and I loved fucking every second of it. I was much happier after Paige came into my life, but I was happy being single. I was perfectly happy to stay single. But that comes with certain compromises. I had, only a couple of £100 to spend every month. Now I can live a life that is significantly more luxurious because our resources are pooled. I know there's somebody that's got my back. There's a lot of things like that. And when it comes to things like your old age, one of the things that's fucking terrifying to think about is there's this whole entire crop of people that are going to be childless without any, having made any proper provision for their future. They're going to get to the age of 70, 72, 73. Who the fuck's going to take care of them? Yeah. They're not going to have kids that'll take care of them. The government won't take care of them because the state pensions are going to go bankrupt. And I mark my words on this. In the next 10 years, the government pension in the UK it either goes bankrupt or they're going to say if you've earned over a certain amount of money, you're not getting it anymore. It's because the same is going to happen with Social Security in the States. And then you think to yourself, what's going to happen in society then? You're going to have a bunch of very pissed off old people.
It's an interesting point. No, I think that could happen. For sure.
Well, I mean, it's simple math.
Yeah.
These things were created with the idea that there were more people paying into it than there were people taking out of it, right? They've now tried to circumvent that problem by increasing the retirement age, hence those riots in France. The reason they've had to do that is because the population pyramid is inverted. So there's now less young people, more old people. So more people taking out, less people putting in. So those funds are going bankrupt. They're going to try and tax people to make up for it, but you can only tax the populace so far. They're going to try and increase the retirement age, but again, modern medicine is going to mean that'll have a limited impact. And in the meantime, you've got a whole generation of people that want to live single lives. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it comes with consequences. They want to live single lives without any accountability, and they want exactly the life that their parents had. They want to, they want to live the sitcom life. I basically don't do any work, spend most of my day in the coffee shop, but I live perfectly comfortable and in a nice one-bed apartment in Manhattan. And it's just not going to happen ever. And then they live the life of resentment because of that. And then, as I said, it's either the migrants who are to blame or it's corporate greed. I was talking about, the migrant issue alone. I was talking to Ralph about that the other day, and I said to him, the irony of it is, for the folks on the right that are so pulled into the migrant conversation, is like, you realize the vast majority of people that come over here from places like Iran, Syria, whatever, they are highly conservative. Highly.
Yeah.
So, they're not the cause of your problem. The societal degradation of your own country is the cause, especially in the UK, is the cause of your problem. But anyway, on that note, mate, I just want to say this, and I mean this very sincerely. It is such an absolute pleasure to be your friend. I'm so proud of what you've been able to achieve. And it's so good to finally meet you in person.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been fucking good. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
This is our sixth one together, but I think probably the best one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
well, hopefully
unique,
the pop music in the background won't ruin it, but I think it'll come out all right. Yeah, absolutely. Light and airy. Yeah. That was Azrael by Trivax off the album Eloah Burns Out. It'll be released by Cult Never Dies Records at the end of September. And as always, what a huge pleasure being able to speak to my good friend Shayan. He will be back on the show without a shadow of a doubt. And hopefully we will be able to do a couple more of these face-to-face conversations sooner rather than later. Because as you can tell, it just relaxes the dynamic a little bit. The conversation flows a bit more freely. And in our case, it means that the talk becomes even more incendiary than normal. But great having him on. And I will admit, I did get a little bit emotive at the end of that chat, for those of you guys that may or may not have noticed it. But, something I'm reasonably happy to confess to. Right. Time now for us to talk about some new music. And first up this week is a release that we didn't talk about much when it came out, but it is almost certainly worthy of your attention. Portals to Darkness is the debut by Unblessed Divine, and it is available right now on Massacre Records. Featuring former members of Sinister and Malevolent Creation, Portal to Darkness complements a heavy mid-era Morbid Angel riffing style with black metal elements, with industrial elements, and at times it makes them sound slightly reminiscent of the first Amenta record, which I of course mean as a huge compliment because I love that album. It is a punishingly heavy record throughout, and Unblessed Divine are almost certainly a massively exciting addition to Massacre Records' roster. Next up, I want to talk about Incantation. As we move from upstarts to seasoned veterans, the US death metal stalwarts Incantation have just released their 13th album, Unholy Deification, on Relapse Records, and I'll be goddamned if this band doesn't sound better than ever. Incantation, I think, have routinely been accused of repeating themselves by various music critics, but what I think they've gotten really spot on this album is to focus on creating songs that amplify their strengths while scaling drastically back on some of the clutter, that maybe did hinder previous albums from being the classics that they could otherwise have been. By their own admission, their new guitar man, Luke Shively, has been a real shot in the arm for this band. I think creatively it shows on songs like Concordat and Megaron, as well as the fantastic closer Circle. And personally, I would say this is the most I've enjoyed an Incantation album since Vanquish in Vengeance, which came out in 2012. It is very easy to see why there's a lot of hype around this album, and I think why the sense of anticipation around this release is certainly more than I've seen it be for Incantation that I can remember. Also, good news, if you're an Incantation fan, I've got Chuck Sherwood and John McKinty of the band on next week's show. So make sure that you check that out. A really surprisingly fun conversation. And like I said, if you're an Incantation fan, you are definitely not going to want to miss that. Then we speak of, or let's talk about the new Blut aus Nord. I mean, when we talk about hype and anticipation, when it comes to black metal, there are very, very few names that inspire the hushed reverence that Blut aus Nord enjoys. And it's no surprise that folks, particularly in the Into the Necrosphere social orbit, are really rather excited about the announcement of a sequel to Disharmonium Undreamable Abysses just a year after it was released. That album, of course, was on the Into the Necrosphere Top 30 of 2022, and most of you absolutely loved it. I thought it was a phenomenal record. The new one is called Disharmonium Nahab, and like I mentioned on the news rant a couple of weeks ago, where Disharmonium Undreamable Abysses sounded like a nightmare about being dragged into some Lovecraftian hellscape, the songs on this album basically make you feel like you're standing right in the very bowels of hell for the entire duration. From start to finish, Disharmonium Nahab presents to me a collision of ambient, discordant, and harmonious elements that is always black metal at its core, but it's executed in a way that really no other band in the scene, even remotely comes close to, or I would imagine even would attempt to. It not only builds, but it also improves on Disharmonium and Dreamable Abysses in several ways. I think starting with the fact that the mix sounds a lot more organic, a lot clearer than that record, and the vocals, which for some were a bit of a sticking point on the previous record, are really handled a lot better too. I mean, they're still mostly just growls and howls and, screams of anguish, but the way that they are presented feels a lot more dynamic, even in slight things like differences in volume and, differences in the way that they're brought out. Like there's some songs where they feel a lot more in your face than they were on the previous record, and it just imbues the music as a whole with a much greater sense of dynamics. It's definitely not going to be an album for everybody. It's not something that you can just put on in the background and, chuck back a couple of beers with your homies. But if you invest time in it, it is absolutely fantastic. And I really think that when it comes to this style of black metal, there is no band in the scene that can hold a candle to Blut right now. Finally, we get on to the third full-length by Drugoth. The album is called Battles May Cease, but War is Forever. For the uninitiated, Drugoth is a one-man project out of Australia that has, since 2017, produced a really interesting take on Dark Throne and Celtic Frost-inspired black metal, with Tolkien-inspired lyrics that tell the story from the perspective of the bad guys rather than the hobbits. I've really enjoyed previous Drugoth albums, particularly last year's Dominion of the Black Flame, but Battles May Cease, but War is Forever is such a massive step up for this band, both in terms of songwriting and execution and also just production overall, that you can pretty much consider every single thing that they've released up to this point a demo. Those vintage influences that I mentioned earlier, the Dark Throne, the Celtic Frost stuff, it's still very much present there, but they're now incorporated into this really unique template that is amplified by crazily demented vocals, infectious riffing, and a fantastic drum performance. And actually, on the topic of drums, Drugoth's insistence on using only a single kick drum actually proves to be an absolute masterstroke in lending just a very unique groove and memorability to proceedings. And you're about to find out exactly what I mean when I play one of my favorite songs off the record for you right now. This is a song called Triumph Born of Bloodshed. You just listened to Triumph Born of Bloodshed off the album Battles May Cease But War Is Forever by Drugoth. It's available right now on Bandcamp. Link in the description to the podcast, and make sure that you head over there and show Drugoth some love, as well as all the other bands that I've mentioned. I'll post all their Bandcamps in the description to the podcast. Also, it has been a phenomenal time to be a fan of heavy music. I know you guys sent me a bunch of other recommendations when I posted about this past weekend's releases on Instagram. I'm going to check all of those out as well and keep the recommendations coming. I love it. I know it doesn't always seem like I get to all of them, but that's just because I'm a busy man. But I will get to them at some point down the road. Either way, like I said, I mean, we are so spoiled for choice right now. It is absolutely unreal. My friends, right now, if you believe that an Exorcist movie without Jason Miller is still an Exorcist movie, then it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, friends, first up on Metal Storm, we've got Temple Balls, who have revealed a new song, and I have to say, Temple Balls sound to me like basically they wrote, or they had two columns of just random words, and they said, all right, we're going to stick it up on a dartboard, blindfold you, and you're just going to throw at it, and whatever the knife or the fucking dart lands into, that's going to be the first word, and then second word will rinse and repeat. And that's how they came up with the name. I'm not going to do us the injury of even attempting to listen to that shite. But we do see that October Tide have unveiled a lyric video for Tapestry of Our End single. It says here, Swedish death doom metal veterans October Tide unveil the first single, Tapestry of Our End, from their forthcoming 7th studio album, The Cancer Pledge. It's due out on October the 6th via Agonia Records, and the song is now available on all streaming platforms, presented in the form of an animated lyric video. Let's hear what it's about. You know, it's easy to forget that this band has technically been around since 1994. And they did take a 11-year leave of absence between 1999 and 2010, which is maybe why I sometimes still think of them as a new band. But I will say this, before we even get to the music video, this to me is a great example of a lyric video done right. I love the animation. For those of you guys that can see this on YouTube, or that are watching this on YouTube, if you're not, then I would definitely suggest you go and check out this video. I think the overall aesthetic of the animation is really cool. It's something that adds nicely to the music. I think it's way better than the usual underpants wearing old man running around on the beach tropes that we've seen when it comes to music videos, generally speaking. The song itself so far isn't bad either. I liked that lead that kicked in around, I don't know whether it's the bridge or the chorus, but that bit that we just paused on now, it sounded like we were on an upswing there creatively. So yeah, so far so good. Let's get back to it.
Of human consciousness, welcome the leeches coming down the walls. We construct the language in art, disguise the cracks behind the braids of flesh.
a very, very overt nod to Paradise Lost on that sequence there. But I do like it, actually. I think it sounds quite cool. I mean, you can almost imagine Nick Holmes doing vocals there. That's so close to sort of mid-era Paradise Lost. But either way, I think it's cool. I think the song is well produced. I think it's, it's nice and heavy. It's not bad at all. Very catchy. I think, with a band like this or a release like this, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this fares in a year like 2023 that has been so overcrowded. And as I said earlier, where we've been so massively spoiled for choice. I'm not hating this at all. I think it's pretty goddamn good, as a matter of fact. All right, next up, Talker have their new album streaming in full. It says here, the worldwide premiere of Talker's upcoming album, Et Hav av Astubbed. And again, apologies to any Norwegians for the way in which I have just butchered your native tongue. Is streaming down below through Black Metal Promotion YouTube channel. The 8th album by the Norwegian black metal band consists of 4 songs, clocking in at 42 minutes, with Host playing all the instruments. The official release date is September 1st, and the album is available for pre-order through Dark Essence Records. Signed copies can be purchased at this location. They've given a link. Immediate comment that I will make before we give this a listen: that first single that they put out, in my opinion, was unacceptably bad, especially by the standards that this guy has set for the band so far. But let's give it a quick spin. We'll try and listen to the first 2 minutes or so and hear what the album sounds like. Alright, sounds like we're in intro territory here, so I may just jump ahead by about a minute. Actually, let's make that 1.5 minutes, and let's hear where we're up to. Got to say, I think that's pretty good. It's definitely a lot better than that preview track that they put out. I don't know why they didn't actually put that song out, maybe just without the intro. But that definitely feels to be more aligned to the direction of Norrecht's Wapen and Strident's House, which I think are both fantastic. Nice melody, nice atmosphere, definitely a typical Tarka song. The only thing I would say is missing there is the production. It sounds a bit thin. And actually these cans I'm listening to the music on right now, they tend to be reasonably forgiving when it comes to poor production, especially thin sounding production where the bass feels like it's lacking. But it sounds very lo-fi, and that's not always a bad thing. But I feel like this could stand to be a little bit more punchy. But let's get back to it. There's enough here to definitely make me want to listen to the album, which I will say was not the case after I heard that first single. So I will spend a bit of time with it, and I might include it on a future episode when I do a proper review of it. But one thing that I will say when it comes to Talker that is always a plus anytime they release a new album, it sends card-carrying Antifa members into fits of moral panic, and in my view, that's always a bonus. Just on a slightly related side note, last week, of course, I spoke about the Black Braid Midgard's Blut saga. I received some really good feedback from all of you guys on it. Seemed like we were mostly aligned in our thinking about it, but I did have one additional observation that I wanted to share just to kind of bookend this whole thing, and it's the last I'll talk about it after this. But I noticed, particularly on a couple of Facebook groups, a few former Black Braid fans were telling tales of how they'd set fire to their LPs and they trashed their merchandise and they wouldn't support somebody who acts in that way even though they like the music. And what I thought was quite interesting was these are the very same people that could be found commenting elsewhere that when it comes to bands like Burzum, you know, I separate the art from the artist. So just an observation, or that there's a slight contradiction there. A principle either applies 100% of the time or it never applies. So just my thoughts on that, and something I noticed that I thought I would share. All right, next up we've got Carnifex, who have put out another single off their forthcoming album. The album is called Necromantium. The official release of Carnifex's next full-length, the Necromantium, is getting closer, they say. Now the deathcore powerhouse offer a brand new single, Death's Forgotten Children, featuring vocalist Tom Barber of Chelsea Grin. Vocalist Scott Ian Lewis comments, I really had a great time working with Tom. Not only did we collaborate on the vocal patterns, but we co-wrote the lyrics, which is something I've never done before. The song came out great, and we both hope the fans love it as much as we do. I really enjoyed that previous Carnifex single. So let's hear what this new one sounds like. I have to say, that first Carnifex single we listened to a couple of weeks ago has been one of the big surprises of 2023 for me so far, and this song is no different. Someone in this band is a massive fan of Norwegian black metal, and they have been let off the leash, creatively speaking, because the addition of that into what this band does makes them so much more listenable than they were before. I think this is a fantastic song. The first minute, 14 seconds, excellent. Heavy, atmospheric, love the melody. I actually quite like the groove as well. I think it's absolutely fucking fantastic. Let's get back to it. I think one of the reasons why this is such a win is because I think there's certainly enough in there to fulfill any deathcore fan's appetite for the scene's usual kind of stomp, grind, breakdown approach. But there's definitely enough in there to turn a naysayer like me into a fan, and to me that is a victory for the band. So very much looking forward to hearing the rest of this. And plus, they also had a bass drop right before the breakdown. By the way, great feedback on everybody from off the back of last week's breakdown countdown list. But my man from Drugoth did point out that I criminally left off Crowbar from the list. That is because every single Crowbar breakdown is the best breakdown. So it's a little bit like if you had your favorite live bands. Rammstein is the best live band. So you probably won't even bother mentioning them because it's just a foregone conclusion. The best breakdowns are written by Kirk Winstein and delivered by Crowbar on Crowbar albums. But if that wasn't abundantly clear, I hope that I have now rectified that. Right, let's move on, my friends. The next song we are going to listen to is Hippie Death Cult. They've got a new song streaming. Don't really know anything about this band, but it says here, in wake of their forthcoming album release, Helichrysum, Oregon-based stoner metal bringers Hippie Death Cult present the second single, Better Days. The new music output will see the light on October the 20th through Heavy Psych Records. I would assume Better Days is a reference to Portland, Oregon, because it almost certainly has seen better days. But anyway, let's give this track a listen. I know this isn't normally the kind of song you guys are going to hear me lose my shit over on the news rant, but I fucking love this. It sounds to me like a combination, or like it's like Jefferson Airplane, Black Sabbath, and Candlemass had a child. And they named him Hippie Death Cult. Like it's almost to me like if you listen to the music, I get these images of like a documentary about the Manson family or something like that. There's definitely like a throwback to late 60s, early 70s psychedelia, but with just something very special to it. It's like there's nostalgic quality without it sounding like it's premeditated, if that makes sense. And that woman sounds exceptional. Whoever she is, fantastic vocalist. Let's get back to it. I know that's not black metal. I know it's not grim cult or necro, but I don't give a fuck. That is top notch. Excellent song. I can't wait to hear the rest of this record. I'm also going to have to check out and see if they have any other stuff, because, as I said, very impressed by that. Okay, who else have we got here? December Noir present a lyric video for Against the Daylight, the new advanced single of their forthcoming record, Your Sunset, My Sunrise. The accompanying lyric video was created by Jerka Perila. Again, I probably mispronounced that name completely. But anyway, no idea what December Noir sounds like, so let's give this a quick listen. So I'm kind of glad I let that one run more than just the usual 60 seconds before I start giving you my first impressions of it, because at first I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Like part of me felt like it was a band who were trying to do Doom, but someone in the band was just too into Exodus and Creator to let them actually get away with it, because like the riffing style almost had that thrashy quality to it, a little bit like The Haunted when Peter Dolving was still in the band. And then all of a sudden we get to this chorus that we sort of paused on just a second ago, and the band just sounds absolutely fantastic. And it's almost like all of those elements just come together really, really nicely in that in that sequence. So yeah, first impressions of this, massively positive. Let's get back to it. It's a really great example of where that polarity between anger and something that's a bit more somber, maybe a bit more depressing, where that works so well. And it's not a lot of bands that can pull that off. There's an awful lot of bands that try and do that, and then the heavy stuff sounds contrived, or it sounds fake, or vice versa. The heavy stuff sounds really cool, and the bits where they're getting a little bit more moody, that just sounds like it's just half-assed. But I'd say on this front, it's a win on both counts. Great stuff, really, really good. Okay, next up, my friends, we have got Farsoth, who have revealed Nothingness as the name of their new single. Farsoth, of course, not to be confused with Farsot, and if you are not familiar with Farsot's absolutely sensational 2017 record, Fail Lure, then definitely make sure that you change that. But Nothingness, it says here, is the second advanced music piece from the new Farsoth album Morbid Symphonies. I don't know what I was about to say there, but anyway, the latter comes out on October the 27th on Black Lion Records. Like I've said before, Black Lion Records are labeled on the Ascent. So let's hear what Farsoth have cooked up on their second single. The other day on Facebook, I read somebody post something about how much they disliked the use of the term old school death metal to describe bands like Farsoth, Gatecreeper, Undeath, and a host of other bands. So I'm going to stay away from that, and the way I'll describe this is a group of younger men who are doing an admirable job of channeling their love of Entomb's left-hand path and dismembers like an ever-flowing stream, complete with that same buzzsaw, dry Sunlight Studios style production. Like I said, I think they're doing a decent job of it. My issue with this, and with a lot of bands of this style, is that there's so many bands doing it that I think in order to stand out from the crowd, you kind of need to do something that distinguishes you a little bit, especially when your competition is the likes of Bloodbath and bands like that. You need to do something that makes you stand out from the crowd, and so far in the first 60 seconds there, I'm not really hearing anything that is making this especially memorable. So let's get back to it. Definitely, pretty much every element. If you're into this style of music, pretty much every element that you would want to have present is there. The production is beefy. I think the riffing sounds cool. I think the vocalist is very capable. He certainly sounds plenty pissed off and aggressive. And the song itself isn't bad. If this came out 20 years ago, I mean, people would have been all over this like a fucking rash. But it just, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, there's just an ingredient X that I feel is a little bit missing. And it may well be that listening to the rest of the record, that's not the case. Maybe there's some, really, really good songs to listen to on that. I'm not writing this off and calling it nonsense. But I'm missing something. I'm missing something that's going to make me want to go back to that song. And I'd be surprised if, again, especially in a year, in a season that has been this, or where we have been blessed with this much as far as new great music is concerned, I'd be very surprised if most people don't feel the same. Okay, let's move on. Profanatica have launched a new track. It says here, Profanatica have launched the third single from their oncoming studio record, Crux Simplex. The latter sees its release on September the 22nd via Season of Mist. Profanatica, of course, a band that was spawned out of Incantation, who, as I said earlier, will be my guests on next week's podcast. I have enjoyed all of the tracks they've put out off this record so far. Lots of excitement amongst the Legion about it as well. It's not hard to understand why, so let's hear what the third single sounds like. I think so far it sounds very good, and I can definitely see that if you like Incantation as an example, I think you're going to enjoy this. If you're a fan of Grave Miasma, you'll enjoy this too. One thing that I'm sitting here thinking about is they went on tour with Panzerfaust not too long ago. If I were in Profanatica, I would have, I don't know, I might have been a little nervous about following up the Panzerfaust boys if this were my material. And I'm not saying it's bad, but what I'm saying is that on that particular bill, Panzerfaust maybe is just more my taste. Like, there's more variety, there's more depth to it than what I've heard so far. We're only 1 minute and 23 in, so that may well change. But yeah, this feels to me very much like it kind of is what it sets out to be, right? It is what it says on the tin. It's, fast, aggressive, blasphemous, vintage sounding death metal. That kind of has hints of Incantation, Acheron, bands like that, but not quite the level of depth of a Panzerfaust. But let's get back to it. So I've got to say, the song gets a lot better when it slows down and it's got that doomier passage. And it's a very simple piece, but it actually shows how much atmosphere you can create, or how much atmosphere the right musician can create with really not a lot of complexity. You know, there's not like keyboards or anything like that going on there, but it still has like a really, you know, ominous feeling to it, which I think is very good. So, like the song, or at least the bit that I've heard of it, thumbs up. Not a top notch potentially, but certainly a thumbs up. Okay, folks, moving on. Forted have premiered the second single from their upcoming record. It says here, Icelanders Forted are back with the second single and video from their upcoming album, Narcissus. Check out an official video for Puzunt Bajinga Smeor. And again, apologies to Iceland for raping their native language. That being said, you guys know I love me some Icelandic black metal, so very excited to hear what this sounds like. Without further ado, let's get to it. All right. It seems like we are in intro territory. So I'm going to jump to the 1 minute 45 second mark, just so we can hear what things sounds like when business is picked up. Yeah, I'll hit play and we'll get back to it. So two things. I'm gonna start with the negatives and then let's go into the positives. So first of all, I'm slightly surprised that the music video seems to me to be so completely and utterly unserious when it is set against the backdrop of what I really do think is high caliber black metal riffing. I mean, the music video is like, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll have seen it. It's like two Viking looking guys, but dressed in modern clothing, having a property line dispute with these like almost, you know, like they had in the silent era films where they would kind of, you know, show a scene and then they would have like a piece of dialogue written and splashed up on like a black screen in between clips. It's kind of that terrible. I mean, for sure, Forted guys, don't do any more music videos ever again if this is the kind of thing you're going to put out, because it detracts from the brand that you need to be putting out, or the image that you need to be portraying. That's my view anyway. The second thing I'm surprised by is that we're 2 minutes 49 seconds in and there are still no vocals, which I find to be odd. I mean, it's a 6 minute 26 song, so you know it sounds like it, you know, maybe a bit long, but by now you would think somebody would be vocaling. That being said, I mean, musically, it is fucking sensational, and I continue to be amazed about the quality of black metal coming out of a country with a population of less than 500,000. It is roughly the size of Ohio, and yet we can name off the top of our heads Almirkmi, Misterming, Sinmara, Wormlust, Hellfro, and a fucking ton of other phenomenal bands to come out of this country. From my perspective, really all countries should be replicating every single thing Iceland is doing to stimulate this creativity immediately, because it's just mind-blowing. I mean, this must be per capita the best black metal scene on the planet, without a shadow of a doubt. Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead by another minute, purely because I'm keen to hear what the vocals sound like, and we'll see what it looks like from the still here that the property dispute has now turned into fully fledged armed combat. But anyway, let's hear what it sounds like. Oh, the song is fucking excellent. I mean, when those vocals kick in finally, it is brilliant. Spectacularly catchy riffing. The atmosphere is awesome. It sounds to me, when I listen to the guitar work, that whoever is responsible for the writing here clearly likes them some second wave Norwegian black metal, but they also really like Painkiller by Judas Priest. And I am absolutely on board for it. What I am less on board for is this atrocious music video. I mean, the acting and the choreography of the Mortal Kombat we've just seen actually reminded me a little bit of the you know, when you see these Nigerian movies where the guy has like Mortal Kombat type powers, it's kind of like that. But from my perspective, Forted, frankly, if you make music this good, do whatever you want when it comes to music videos. But if I were your manager, I would tell you, let's keep the old video camera away from you guys, and let's focus on the riffs. Okay, let's move on now, my friends, to We Are the Pit, and the list that they have just put out: 10 brilliant metal albums from the 2000s that you've likely never heard of. It says here, after a brief scroll through our social media comments recently, it became abundantly clear that while the Pit readers love hearing about genre staples like Metallica and Slipknot, there's a burning desire to learn more about more under-the-radar acts. And hell, there's nothing more than we love doing than nerding out about metal bands, especially ones that we think deserve more of a spotlight. They did that 10 most underrated albums of the 2000s, so I don't know whether they're repeating themselves here. It certainly doesn't seem that way, because I can't remember them talking about their first selection, Black Breath, which also put out their album in 2012. So my list will be records put out anywhere from 2000 on. So anyway, we'll get that rule out of the way. Let's go through their list. So first up, they've got Black Breath, Sentenced to Life, which came out in 2012. It's a great record, that. If you like that kind of buzzsaw entombed sound but with a bit of a crust punk edge to it, phenomenal album. Strongly recommended. Then they've got Dead in the Dirt, The Blind Hole. Don't really know that very well. Elder, Reflections of a Floating World. It says here, if Mastodon, Graveyard, Russian Circles, and Witchcraft had a very handsome love child. Another one I don't really know. Generation of Vipers, Coffin Wisdom. It says here, imagine if Amebix and Quicksand wrote songs about numerology and witchcraft, or if Godflesh and Helmet wrote songs touching on sleep paralysis. Yeah. Conjurer, Curse These Metal Hands, 7 Angels, 7 Plagues. They actually have a YouTube embedded version of that album here. So we can give that a quick listen. It says here, for our money, this is one of, if not the greatest metalcore albums ever laid to tape. Actually, I take that back. I don't want to listen to metalcore. Arceus, A Celebration of Guilt. That's pretty decent. I remember reviewing that for Chronicles of Chaos, and I think it got 8 out of 10. So not bad at all. Dead to Fall, Villainy and Virtue, another metalcore release, so I don't care. Burnt by the Sun, soundtrack to The Personal Revolution. This is absolutely fucking genius. I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago when I mentioned Burnt by the Sun. I think they've got out 3 records and an EP, and really, from my perspective, all of those releases are 10 out of 10 albums. They are brilliant. It actually features Dave Whitty, they say here, of Human Remains, Municipal Waste, etc. I mean, the main thing is, if you like... I mean, they call it metalcore, yeah, but I wouldn't really call it metalcore. If you like hardcore on complete overdrive with like grind elements thrown in, then Burnt by the Sun is your band. Start with a single called There Will Be Blood, which named after the greatest film of all time, and then work your way through the rest. You will not be disappointed. It is brilliant. And then they've also got Burst, Origo, which was put out in 2005. It says here, Origo was the first album by Swedish prog metalers Burst. A brilliant full-length that conjures up the best parts of Mastodon, Neurosis, and Isis. That is a spectacular record. So another one that I would strongly recommend. Now for my 6 of the best albums from the 2000s that you need to revisit. I'm going to start with really the band that has been the house band of Into the Necrosphere. Literally speaking, they were the intro song for Into the Necrosphere for the better part of, I think, the first 100 plus episodes. That band, of course, Stellar Master Elite. Long-time members of the Legion should know who I'm talking about. And from my perspective, I don't think there is a bad record in the Stellar Master Elite discography, but for my money, the third album, the Psychospherical Chapter, is the one that has grown on me and has kind of become my favorite over the last couple of years since I discovered that band. So over the course of this album's 1 hour runtime, they give the nod to everyone from the Ruins of Beverast to Red Harvest to Dark Throne, while still managing to sound really original. The record is a grower, as I said. It certainly took a while to grow on me, but if you invest the time in it, you will thank me for it. Next up, we have got Belligerent Intent with The Crucifier. This is an album that dropped in 2016. It features the always masterful Matt Wilcock on guitar. Matt Wilcock, of course, of Antichrist Imperium and Werewolf fame. And he delivers on this record an absolute masterclass, or I should say yet another masterclass, in blackened death metal pummeling. In many ways, this record plays to me like a more song-orientated take on the style that Vital Remains were pushing with their album Dechristianize, which I know Matt is a very big fan of. You can see some of the flair in Matt's riffing that has gone on to become a staple of particularly Werewolves. And to me, this is an album that just never really got the attention that it should have gotten at the time of its release. That, in my opinion, is a complete and utter disgrace, and it needs to be rectified. So make sure that you go back and you check out The Crucifier by Belligerent Intent, also a band, in my opinion, with a phenomenal name. Next up, we've got Call of the Void with Dragged Down a Dead End Path. That came out in 2013. I love this band so much that I could probably dedicate entire episodes to their back catalogue, and also my enduring bitterness about their decision to break up. If you like bands like Burnt by the Sun, that we spoke about just a second ago, then you absolutely need to give these guys a listen, and you can start on Dragged Down a Dead End Path. It's a combination of crust punk, hardcore metal, and even kind of stoner doom stuff. But really what it boils down to is the sound of pure, unfiltered testosterone that has been distilled and turned into music. Absolutely brilliant. Next up, we've got Job for a Cowboy with Sun Eater. I have mentioned in the past how much I love this. And you can call Job for a Cowboy a MySpace band, trendcore, or whatever other snide little slur you wish. But if you have dismissed them without at least giving this album a listen, then you can fuck right off. Sun Eater, from my perspective, was the sound of Job for a Cowboy graduating from the school of deathcore and really coming into their own in an exceptional way with a challenging, exciting, entertaining record. The album included an incredible fretless bass performance by Nick Skenzelos. I believe that's how you pronounce his surname. He was, of course, with Cephalic Carnage as well. It's, in my opinion, probably one of the best bass performances ever caught on record. It does make the album remind me slightly of Death's individual thought patterns, which is no bad thing. And actually, the rest of the band are also in peak form throughout. Vocals sound incredible. The guitar sound amazing. The drums are absolutely pummeling. There have been rumors for a while now that Job for a Cowboy are recording a new album, and if it is anything like this masterpiece, then you can count me very excited about that indeed. Next up, we have got Blood Revolt with Indoctrine that came out in 2010. This is an album that I must confess I absolutely hated when I first heard it, but proving that the best albums are ones that grow on you over time. Blood Revolt's debut and, from my understanding, only release has since gone on to occupy a very special place in my heart. It features two members of the Canadian black metal band Revenge, as well as the inimitable Alan Averill of Primordial, Verminous Serpent, and others on vocals. And it sounds pretty much like the most demented version of what you'd imagine that collaboration to be.
Blood, yes, hallelujah to the blood, yes, glory be to God. Infidels corrupt, I'm not you. Heritage to the fire. And perfect to God.
This is raw, it's lo-fi, it's absolutely relentless blackened death metal from bell to bell. It's powered by a phenomenal performance by Alan Averill. And there is something that is particularly unnerving, both about the way the music is presented, but also about the realism in the lyrics. The lyrics is about radicalization and, you know, people kind of being so alienated by urban living and by modern society that they fall into antisocial behavior. But yeah, absolutely fantastic, thrilling in how musically adventurous it is. And would I say I hope that they do another one of these? Yes, but I think there's a spontaneity to this album that if you were to repeat it, it would need to be the right circumstances to repeat it. If I get Alan back on the podcast, maybe he and I can talk about that in more detail. But we move on to my final selection of my 6 of the best list. Evoken, Antithesis of Light. Now, I'm not the biggest Funeral Doom fan. That is mostly because I don't think that there is another band on the planet that will ever come within sniffing distance in that scene of what Evoken achieved on their 3rd album. Unlike many of their contemporaries who focus on plodding riffs, slow rhythms, claustrophobia, those things commonly associated with the scene, Evoken used those elements to build towards moment after moment of absolutely glorious, and when it hits, emotionally devastating payoff. Every song on this album clocks in at just over 10 minutes. There is never a dull moment to be found. If you listen closely now and compare it to some of my other favorite albums like Exuvia by Ruins of Everest, you can almost certainly hear a direct link in comparison. A very heavy Evoken influence on that record. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Evoken inject enough variety, enough creativity into Antithesis of Light to ensure that it's an album that you can come back to again and again, and it will always be rewarding. So I hope you guys enjoyed that list. I hope you guys have enjoyed the news rant, because it is wrapped up for this week. Of course, I hope you also enjoyed this episode, because we are done until next Tuesday. I will be back with John McKinty and Chuck Sherwood of Incantation, and we will be talking all about their brand new album, a bit about the history of the band, and much more. If you're a fan of the band, or if you're not a fan of the band, make sure that you tune in. I'm going to close off with another one of the Reaper Fest bands. Unfortunately, I didn't meet these guys, but I'm going to have to change that, because their music, it turns out, is absolutely sensational. The band is Devastator. The song is called Liar in Wait. It's off their forthcoming album. Whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.